The following presentation will be on the Catholic Church child sexual abuse crisis. Churches are seen as a welcoming environment, a safe haven, where families gather to search their spirituality and enlightenment. However, recent discovery found that bishops and other leaders of the Roman Catholic Church in Pennsylvania covered up child sexual abuse by more than 300 priests over a period of 70 years, where thousands of children became victims to the predatory behavior. This revelation showcased the phenomenon of sexual abuse taking place within the Catholic churches around the world. From Australian country towns to schools in Ireland and cities across the U.S., the Catholic Church has faced an avalanche of child sexual abuse accusations in the last few decades, thus highlighting the need for immediate intervention for this crisis. In the following section, I will introduce the Paul Weir Conflict Mapping Tool to help better understand the Catholic child sexual abuse crisis. The Paul Weir Conflict Mapping Tool will help analyze the following components of the conflict: history, context, parties, issues, unpredictable dynamics, alternative routes to solutions, and conflict regulation potential. The following sections will break down each component and showcase how this map can be used as the first step for intervention to help develop a uniform strategy for collaboration and transform the environment within the churches. The first component of the conflict mapping tool is the conflict history and context. Due to the occurrence of abuse taking place around the globe for many decades, the conflict history is deeply rooted within the modernity of the Catholic Church. While some accusations date back to 1950s, molestation by priests was first given significant media attention in the 1980s. Therefore, the cover-up should also be noted as part of the conflict's history. The discovery within the Pennsylvania abuse scandal emphasizes how long the cover-ups have been enabling the environment for abuse, but it also confirms the high probability of abuse that could have taken place in other countries as well. However, the Holy See, being the highest authority of the Catholic Church, has not intervened in this crisis, and thus gives insight on the context of their political structure. The next component of the conflict mapping tool identifies the parties within the Catholic Church child abuse crisis. The primary actors within this conflict are the assailants or priests and clergymen that committed the sexual assaults and the victims or children that were abused. However, research shows that 81% of minors sexually abused by priests were male, and the majority of those were between the ages of 11 and 14. The secondary actors are the members of the church that assisted in the cover-ups, since they became accomplices to the assailants' crimes. Additionally, the other secondary actors include the Catholic churches and the Vatican, who are the policymakers and enforcers that are enabling the hostile environment, and the victims' families along with the faith-based communities who are affected by it. Sequentially, the third parties within this conflict are the local authorities, including the government and police force, since crimes of abuse are taking place. Other third actors include the intervening agencies such as therapists, psychologists, mediators, and other faith-based communities rallying for effective intervention and resolution. The weaknesses seen within this conflict are tied to the issues that are driving the predatory behavior. The first issue is the lack of transparency the Catholic churches have regarding the sexual misconduct from the clergyman due to the large amount of cover-ups taking place. Another issue regarding the sexual assaults is that there is no accountability for the assailants. Policymakers such as the Vatican and Church have not developed or enforced enough policies to help dissuade assailants and hold them accountable. The assaults have been covered up for decades, but only until recently Pope Francis called for decisive action when he was elected in 2013, but critics say he has not done enough to hold to account bishops who allegedly covered up abuse. This leads to the issue of no prioritization for this conflict, since the top-level authorities have not intervened or developed uniform strategies to help prevent attacks across the globe. After analyzing the weaknesses or issues within the conflict mapping tool, the unpredictable dynamics can be assessed. The principal factor that affected these attacks were the cover-ups that not only allowed the abuse to continue, but it also allowed for the assailants to not be criminally charged for their attacks. This makes the cover-ups an unpredictable dynamic to the conflict, since they are a community that normally promotes righteousness and justice and rebukes sinful behavior. Yet they were condoning the sexual abuse with their cover-ups for so many years without seeking justice for the victims. While the reasons for the cover-ups may have been to avoid public scrutiny and distrustful backlash from their community, their negligence have made the crimes too old to prosecute. Consequently, these cover-ups progressed as the grand jury's lengthy investigation into abuse by priests also revealed a widespread cover-up that went all the way to the Vatican. The next component to address within the conflict mapping tool is the alternative routes to solutions. The Catholic churches have tried to remotely intervene since they developed prevention programs to help reduce the attacks and improve the safety for the children within the churches. Recently, Pope Francis has called a global meeting of Catholic bishops to discuss how to prevent sex abuse. This open forum can be seen as an alternative route to solutions since it is helping the development of a uniform language for positive transformation that can be applied to all Catholic churches. Unfortunately, if a holistic and ubiquitous solution is not applied for this conflict, then more assaults and cover-ups will take place. Therefore, the final component of the conflict mapping tool helps pinpoint the best suggestions for collaborative intervention that will help transform the hostile environment of Catholic churches and help restore the damaged reputation and credibility. While the aforementioned solutions such as the open forums and preventive programs are needed, they should be taking place throughout all Catholic churches and within all levels of their structure. Furthermore, the preventive program should teach children on how to identify risky situations and use assertive communication to prevent sexual assaults. However, facilitation will be vital within the transformation process to help develop recovery plans for victims and their families. Intervening agencies should also facilitate communication between the Catholic policymakers across the globe in order to encourage the urgency for accountability and transparency to restore the faith and broken relationships within the communities. Additionally, another suggestion that should take place in order to dissuade predatory behavior is to decrease privacy and increase surveillance between priests and children. Finally, Catholic churches should develop policies to work with law enforcement and hold assailants accountable for their crimes in order to dissuade and prevent other assailants from continuing their behavior. The next slide will provide an overview of the conflict that highlights the important information within this conflict in order to establish a uniform dialogue should intervention take place.